So here we go. I'm going to get into a video with Joy Reid and her specifically talking about two things: Nick Fuentes and the Chinese students Trump is entering in America. And so this is, at least from my opinion, which is from an economic standpoint, it makes sense because these guys actually do put a lot of money into publics. It makes a lot of sense because these guys put money into public universities, which helps subsidize them. And I'll show you this real quick before we begin, but they contributed 28% of all tuition fees to public universities in 2015. This is the most recent one that I could find. I couldn't find anything, a little more closer in terms of years. But here's my thought. I entirely get the sentiment, which other people are saying, which is it should have gone to American students. Why are more Chinese students being put into schools? Why is it that we're supposed to be America first when Chinese students are being prioritized in American education when Americans could have filled that spot themselves? And that sentiment is 100% legitimate too. So it all comes down to, do you believe more money from the Chinese students is better, or do you believe that American students should get the opportunity to go to those places instead over those Chinese students? This is one of those decisions where I don't particularly agree more with one side than the other, but let's get into this.
Hey guys, so it's been
Mm-hmm.
interesting watching the right meltdown over
Yep.
Donald Trump's announcement that he is going to approve 600,000
Yep.
new visas for Chinese students, Chinese nationals who
Mm-hmm.
are going to be students in the United States. Here's the announcement.
Look, we're getting along very well with China,
Yeah.
and I'm getting along very well with President Xi. I think it's very
Oh God,
insulting to
what?
say your
That looks
students can't
weird.
come here because they'll go out and they'll start building schools and they'll be able to survive it. But I like that their students come here. I like that other countries' students come here. And you know what would happen if they didn't? Our college system would
Mm-hmm.
go to hell very quickly. You'd have, and it wouldn't be the top colleges. It would be
Yep.
colleges that struggle on the bottom.
Yeah. Public
And you
colleges.
take out 300,000 or 600,000 students out of the system. I like having, and I told this to President Xi,
Mm-hmm.
that we're honored to have their students here. Now, with that, we check and we're careful and we see who's there. And Marco wants that. We spoke. We're in the same position.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a tremendous college system, the best in the world. Nobody even close. That's why China sends them here. And you can call it an industry if you want, but you're talking about millions of people. And I'm honored to have the students from China come here. And we're just getting along very well with China. And
Yeah.
Now, this isn't new. In
Yeah.
June, Donald Trump made virtually the same exact announcement. In that case, he did say 500,000, but he said basically the same thing. Here's that.
look, I've always
Yep.
been in favor of students coming in from other countries. That includes China. And we have 500,000 Chinese students coming in. I've always been in favor of it. Does it mean that you have to watch people? Yeah, you have to watch students, but you have to watch other people also. I've
Mm-hmm.
always been strongly in favor of it. I think it's a great thing. It's good for our schools. I think it's good for our country. I'm also in favor of having them stay. I've been in favor of letting them stay. If you get educated for 4 years, you're willing to get educated for 4 years. I like people being able to stay. You know, they have some great students. You have some.
So this whole thing all comes down to, what do you prefer? American students getting those positions or Chinese students giving lots of money to schools that may be underperforming or may not have the students necessary? And this is one of those things where I don't where I'm perfectly fine with both sides of the argument, so I'm not going to like throw out this is a right one, this is a wrong one. That's his stance on it, and let's see what she says.
Now, the meltdown over this has been pretty epic.
Yep.
On X Twitter, all the racist MAGAs are screaming and howling about
Mhm.
more Chinese people being in the country, and aren't they all supposed to be spies? And what the hell? What is
Mhm.
Trump doing? I didn't vote for this. Blah 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 blah, and using
Yeah.
some pretty racist language to do that, which is prompting a scramble in conservative TV world to
Yep.
mount a pushback, including getting Howard and Lutnick on the job and getting Fox News on message.
Well,
Yep.
the president's point of view is that what would happen if you didn't have those 600,000 students is that you'd empty them from the top.
All the
the
videos
students
look
would
weird.
go up to better schools, and the bottom 15% of universities and colleges would go out of business in America. So his view is
I will say this. If you can't survive without a lot of subsidies, like, do you really deserve to survive? Like, if these universities have good grades, I'll give that an exception, but if they're doing bad grades and they're not going to be able to survive without random international students coming, I personally believe it's just better to let those institutions die. Let another one take its place, one that's far better, and one that is far better at competing in the free market than that one.
he's taking a rational economic view, which is classic Donald Trump.
Nick
Mm-hmm.
Fuentes has given some of the most interesting commentary on this. And by the way, I'm just going to sidebar here. Watching some of like Nick Fuentes's black
Yep.
stands, his black conservative stands gush over him on
Oh, yeah.
YouTube is actually gross. Y'all.
I'll say this. I know what she's talking about, but like, yes, Nick Fuentes is a white nationalist. Yes, there's stuff. There's a lot of stuff like this. But I think it mostly comes down to people like her, for example. They're more pretentious. They're more willing to lie to your face or lie to make certain messages without villainizing themselves. Whereas Nick Fuentes, even though he says some shit that, a lot of people don't like, don't respect, and think should not be said, he has one thing different from these people, which is he's genuine, at least about all his stuff. Even if there are some opinions that are absolutely terrible from him, he's at least genuine about it. And he's at least willing to lose like his bank account, pretty much all his bank account and pretty much all his finances over his views, rather than someone who's willing to go with a certain news station, do everything they say just because they're getting paid for it, and always neglect that, and always try to give this image that they are the moral high ground. Their opinion is right in a more fake sense. Oh, yeah.
Snap out of it. Stop riding his jock. It's really gross.
Mm-hmm.
You know who you are. Just, oh my God, oh my God. I can look aside some of the things he says, but who cares? I'm more concerned about people who are lying to my face and pretending they like me than, Nick Fuentes speaking facts. Okay, well, you know what, y'all? Get off his jock. I don't know if you're trying to get clicks by being his fans, but he don't need black stands, okay? I'm sure he doesn't want them either. Okay, but he's one of those broken clocks that is right sometimes, right? Every broken clock is right once or twice a day. Marjorie Taylor Greene found her way to the right side on Gaza, etc., etc.
I think the funny thing is that she actually fits the exact statement she says. Sometimes a broken clock is right, and she's a big example of that. So it's not like you're making a really good point in retrospective.
It can happen. Tucker Carlson did. So the right, they ain't always
Mhm.
wrong, right? Sometimes they get them things right. And in Nick Fuentes' case, he's sort of a smarter, younger Tucker Carlson, right? He has similar views, but he's sharper. He's
Bro, no, they hate each other.
Nick Fuentes, this child, this weird little gay kid in his basement in Chicago,
said, I'm a weird gay kid in the basement. Yeah, and I'm from Chicago. You're right.
So yeah, out of context, it's extremely hilarious, but Nick Fuentes said he was only right about one thing, which was he's from Chicago. But out of context, it sounds funnier, so I'm just gonna leave it that way.
White supremacist. I don't think that he would disagree with me saying he is. I think that's what he considers himself, right? The Groyper guy. But he's caught on to a couple of things that I think are actually true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's game recognizing, or he's recognizing the game Republicans have been playing specifically with young white men. Because that's who he speaks for. He speaks for young white men and their anger about a lot of things, but specifically about immigration. Take a listen to a little bit of what his commentary was on the 600,000 visas.
600,000 international students from China.
Yep.
600,000 students from China. Are you tired of winning yet? Got what you voted for? We're going to get along with China, he said. So Last year, the government approved 400,000 student visas. There's currently roughly 250,000 Chinese students enrolled in colleges. Trump says we're going to have 600,000 additional Chinese students come in.
Mm-hmm.
And already the bulk of the foreign students are Chinese and Indian. We're going to double that number at least, or triple it, depending on if the existing student body population is included or if.
And that's what I specifically meant by I don't really see a reason to really take a big stance on either side, just because his opinion is entirely valid here on what he's saying right now, which is he's not prioritizing Americans, he's prioritizing immigrants who come here for like learning, and those spots should have went to Americans if we are America first, which does make sense on a more America level. But if you look at the other way, they make us money, so it also makes sense economically to do it. So it's entirely depending on, since the thing is, I do get the sentiment, I do understand, which is why I'm not like downplaying what like this side is saying at all.
Now, what's fascinating is that obviously this administration has backed down on its maximalist immigration agenda. Like, let's just be very, very clear about what we're saying here. The Trump administration backed down. It promised one thing, we're getting something totally different. Everyone can acknowledge this. What we were promised was mass deportations.
And that's exactly what we're getting. The thing is that Nick Fuentes also is so far right to the point where Donald Trump looks like a liberal to him. But Trump has been doing very good on deportations. The thing is, he has to get more into these big cities in places that want to protect the immigrants. That's his biggest problem so far when it comes to it. Because if you look at states like Florida, Texas, all that, they've been agreeing with him and they've been doing everything to help him deport these people.
And what does that mean? It means door-to-door raids. All these illegal immigrants, we know where they are. We're going to identify them. We're going to remove them from the country.
Mm-hmm.
We're also going to slow or altogether suspend most immigration into the United States.
Yep.
That's sort of how it was sold to us last year. Maybe not even necessarily by Trump, but by his followers, by his influencers, by the surrogates. We were sold a bill of goods in 2016, 2020, and 2024 that together represented an America First maximalist immigration agenda. And people had visions of the 10 million illegals under Biden being removed from America.
Oh, yeah. While Trump has been getting rid of people, we still need to focus on that because 10 million is an astronomically huge number. So Trump has deported 200,000 people, which is nowhere near 10 million. It's the highest level in a decade, which does make sense. So he still has a lot of time left to do. And let's see, has recorded near 350,000 deportations since the president returned in January. Other deportations in this year include repatriations by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Coast Guard, as well as people who chose to self-deport. Prior to Trump taking office, ICE had recorded around 71,000 deportations between October 2024 and the end of December. Including those, ICE could surpass 300,000 deportations in the fiscal year of 2025, which ends September 30. The last time the agency recorded that many deportations was under President Barack Obama, when around 316,000 people were removed. Yeah. Too many people don't remember that Obama did deport a lot of people. Although his numbers are a little iffy because about all the people he deported, some of them were considered like him just rejecting people coming here. and those were also considered deportations. So I think his number is a little bit inflated, but overall, Obama was actually pretty decent when it came to deporting. Like they, like to the point where Obama was actually called deporter in chief. Let me show you. Like I could just write this, and and the place will already tell me exactly what it is. I think I spelled that wrong. Let's see. Here it is, deporter in chief. Look, Barack Obama. Like all I did was search a random nickname, and immediately it brought up Barack Obama. Like that's how you know at least he did have a good deportation record, at least mostly. Anyways, let's get back to this.
That illegal immigrant labor would be cracked down on using
Yep.
E-Verify, making it more difficult to hire these people.
Mm-hmm.
The largest domestic deportation operation since Operation Wetback, among other things. What we're getting is different. Basically, since Trump got into office, he has walked it back and said, well, we're not going to deport the illegal immigrants that have jobs. And which jobs did he say? The jobs that have the biggest percentage of illegal immigrants working them. Meat processing plants, farms, construction sites, hotels, restaurants.
I will have to fact check that later. I don't know for sure.
Basically, from the time Trump got into office, he started to talk about a carve-out, instructing DHS to slow and eventually suspend the deportation of illegal immigrant labor.
So at least from Grok, this is not entirely accurate. Trump is not deporting people in farming hotels, and as his administration's policies have been inconsistent on this front. In June 2025, Trump acknowledged concerns from farmers and hospitality industry, stating that his aggressive immigration policies were removing valuable workers from these sectors. He suggests changes were coming out to protect these industries. Immigration and Customs Enforcement briefly paused raids on farms, hotels, and restaurants, as noted in an internal email from senior ICE official. However, just days later, this pause was reversed, with ICE resuming raids on these industries after pressure from hardline advisors like Stephen Miller, who pushed for continued mass deportations. Trump's statements have oscillated, reflecting internal White House tensions. He expressed sympathy to farmers, hoteliers, even floating ideas like a temporary pass for certain workers, but no concrete policy changes have materialized except to accept these industries. ICE continues to target workplaces including agriculture, hospitality, with a goal of 3,000 daily arrests. Though they've only achieved around 2,000, despite Trump's acknowledgement that these deportations were hurting these sectors, raids have continued and no formal exceptions have been established. For example, raids occurred at a meat packing plant in Oklahoma and farms north of Los Angeles in 2025. Okay, I see it. So he wanted to do it, but it never actually went through, which I think this part is a good thing that it never actually passed. Because I'm just going to say it. If your business is incapable of surviving without illegal immigrants and illegal labor, like do you really deserve to die? The only ones I could possibly understand the sentiment for is farming, because if we have food shortages, that's going to end up very bad. But everything else, get these people out. Farming, put Americans in it, and then get these people out. But yeah, everything else besides that, it should be just a sweep across the board, getting all these people out, throwing them all out to whatever countries they came from, and then having Americans finally have more jobs available for them, and businesses not, taking advantage of labor like cheap labor that these people can't even complain about being treated badly because they're illegal, so if they do, they'll just be deported. But yeah, anyways, let's continue.
We saw very quickly that the numbers were not where they needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
We were not getting enough removals. We were not getting enough arrests, even.
Yeah, he's right about that.
And so we
We're a
were
little
promised
low.
one thing, we're getting something else. What's more, we're getting all this legal immigration. There's talk of stapling green cards to diplomas, bringing in these international students. They approved the maximum
Yep.
amount of H-1B visas for this year already, about 127,000.
Yeah. And for this one, they are coming here the legal process, so there is actual leeway for that because they're not illegally coming into this country. So I think there should be an exception held to that, even though I know some people may not like that stance.
So we were promised one thing, we're getting something else. We're promised a maximalist agenda. They're walking that back, letting us down gently, and the enforcement is something that's completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And all we're saying is, we want what we were promised. We want the America First immigration agenda. We want Trump to follow through. But I, and many people like me, knew that it was never going to happen. We knew last year that it was never going to happen. This is why I take immense satisfaction in the disappointment. Because last year, Republican influencers were paid to lie. They were paid to disregard the truth and ignore the evidence, and they were effectively complicit. Maybe they were the most responsible for creating this perception that we were going to get something other than what was realistic.
Oh, okay. For the influencers part, it's really hard to tell which influencers are paid and which influencers are legit. So that statement does actually have a lot of ground because you don't know who's paid, you don't know who's not, so you don't know who actually has legitimate views versus fake views.
They said mass deportations enthusiastically. Last year, when Trump said he would staple green cards to diplomas, they said to disregard that. They said, pay no attention to that. That's not real. Now that we're getting the realistic immigration agenda of an administration that is beholden to Wall Street and Silicon Valley and the needs of capital, now you say, well, we told you so. Did you get what you voted for? It looks like you fell for it again. The Republican Party, which is controlled by the wealth interests, the special interests that profit from the labor, once again, they tricked you. They lied to you. They used nativist rhetoric. They used xenophobic rhetoric. And by xenophobic, I mean that in the colloquial sense. They played up this talk about immigrants and deportations, Haitians eating cats and dogs. They did that self-consciously to trick you.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. Like, there were some videos popping up where a guy on a grill, he had what looked like potentially a dog. I don't know 100% for sure, but, people from other countries, like, you can't just expect them to act like Americans, so maybe some of them were, maybe some of them weren't, but I wouldn't put it above someone from a country that, came here pretty much starving, eating everything they can to live, to completely change all their values on stuff like that.
Calculated deception. They knew that white people had been radicalized by the millions of illegals that Biden brought in. And so they leaned into those sympathies. They leaned into those feelings and that antagonism. And they did that deliberately, knowing that that would make you enthusiastic about voting. And they knew that was a bait and switch because they all realistically, they did not ever want mass deportations. The billionaires, the oligarchs, Trump in his heart of hearts does not really want mass deportations, is not really committed to that. And as a matter of fact, what they really want is more cheap labor, just the kinds of labor that they need. The high-skilled tech labor, Indian programmers, illegal immigrant berry pickers, farm workers, meat packing workers.
Yeah. And what he's saying is something I constantly said about a lot of businesses, which is instead of hiring Americans, they would rather hire an illegal immigrant who has none of the protections or anything in America. So once they come here, they can be exploited, and they can't legally be protected under the law because if they try, they'll be deported. But yeah, a bunch of companies like the hotel industry is very synonymous for this. A lot of industries that use cheap labor in order to even survive are very well known for this. And my opinion on those businesses is if you can't survive, I'm sorry, but you have to go. You have to go if you can't survive with using illegal labor. Like that's easily the problem.
They knew all along they needed and wanted the labor. And they knew that they would say one thing to get your vote, and then once they got it, they would do something else. You fell for it. You fell. And that's the oldest trick in the book, by the way. They've been doing that forever. The Republicans forever have been pandering to the nativist sensibilities of white people and telling them, law and order, they're all going back. We're going to make America great again. In different words, they've been doing this forever. And then when they get in, they govern just like Democrats. And you fell for it again, like you've fallen for it many times, like you fell for it in 2016. That's what we say. Now, I see all of the cope online. This announcement is made. And like, look, I don't know what to tell you. 600,000 Chinese international students is not America first. It just isn't. And I'll tell you why. Because at the Ivy League universities, their student body is like 24% from other countries. Those are all seats that could go to Americans.
Yeah.
Why would we fill up spots at Harvard and Yale and Stanford and MIT with foreigners? That's not America first. So there's finite resources here. They get those seats, Americans don't. And we're not saying you have 0 foreign students, but a quarter of them.
Okay, now let me unpack a couple of things. Thing one, Donald Trump, when he said in his commentary that if these colleges did not admit these foreign students, a lot of them would go under, he's actually right. That's Donald Trump being a broken clock, right? That's right once in a while. And the reason that Trump is right about that is that these foreign students, I used to teach at Syracuse, I've taught at Howard, and I've always had Chinese nationals in my classes at both schools. In both schools, I had them, and they were, not full English speakers. They were very dedicated students, very sweet, very wonderful. I got like a lovely note from some of my Chinese students at Syracuse. But the reason that they're there is because the foreign students pay full fare. They're not on scholarship.
And that also makes sense, which is there are two sides to this argument. There are two sides to this argument, but I fully understand the other side of the argument that it should have gone to Americans. The thing is, this is not going to illegal immigrants, which is the thing that Nick Fuentes is failing to tell people. And as I said, the thing is, Nick Fuentes is just so far right that Donald Trump is a liberal compared to him. Let's finish this last statement, and I'm going to probably end it around
We're
here.
not on student aid. When I went to Harvard, I was on almost entirely scholarship, right? I had an academic scholarship to Harvard, which meant that out of the $22,000 a year at the time, which is crazy because it's like 80 or 90,000 now, but it was 22,000 a year when I went to Harvard. But of that, I walked away with a total debt of $15,000 because I was on all these different academic scholarships. I got scholarships for my PSAT. I took the PSAT and got a big scholarship for that. I got all these other scholarships. They were all academic. So I wasn't paying full price. That now, by the way, what I had to pay every semester was onerous for me. I was an orphan. I had no parents. I had no one helping me. They gave me my mother's contribution. So I had to work 4 jobs to pay my way through Harvard. But I could escape with only like 15 grand in debt. The students who come not just from China, but from all over the world, international students pay full price. They don't get scholarships. And so these schools aggressively recruit foreign students because that's how they keep their bottom line, right? Between that and a lot of the government grants that Trump is trying to take away from these schools, that's a lot of the way they pay their bills because a lot of the American students are on student aid.
Or
on loans. A lot of kids are on deeply, they come out deeply indebted because of student loans, right? My husband went almost entirely on loans and came out with like a house. He could have bought a house with the amount of money of debt, right, that he owed when he left
Yep.
college. So bottom line, the foreign students are needed by the colleges because they help pay the bills. That's